chabe ulipamba vune ufunika chabe munia.
Hey, hello, how y'all doing? This is Kena. Welcome to Kena Reads. Today, my husband and I are going to be continuing our marriage series and talking about things that may interest couples, or maybe you are engaged and you're going to be marrying soon, or maybe you're dating and your goal is to get married one day. We're just giving our perspective on issues. Free to comment below and like this and subscribe. Subscribing helps the page thrive. Commenting helps the page thrive. So if you enjoy the content, please make sure you comment and like and subscribe. Hello again, welcome to Kena Reads. We are back on our porch, here to have a conversation. This is my husband Charles, looking cool in his shades. How are you all doing today? How are your marriages? How is dating going? If you hear a noise, that's the dog on the porch. Okay, so no worries, the dog is fine. Just a little bit about us. We've been married 13 years. We just celebrated our 13th anniversary in February. Are we still in February? We are. Okay. Time is flying by. So we celebrated this month, and we just wanted to, have a conversation about our perspective. It is windy out, so hopefully you all will be able to hear us as we're having this conversation. But we like to do things outside. Outside is nice. We live in the country. And anyway, we get a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Charles. I'm originally from Zambia. Zambia is in the southern part of Africa. So now living in North Florida with my beautiful wife here. Absolutely.
Probably seen us on prior videos, but for all of you new people, hello and welcome to Kena Reads. We're just talking about marriage and all some of the subject matters that come up with marriage. Today's topic, culture differences. Talking about cross-cultural differences in marriage. I am American, born and raised in Texas. My parents were American, descendants from those who were enslaved many generations ago. So we've been in the United States for a very long time, our family generations. And obviously Black American. Okay. Charles is Zambian, born and raised in Zambia, country of Zambia in Africa. And so what a lot of people don't talk about is cultural differences. They'll talk about interracial, they'll talk about religious, but they don't necessarily talk about differences in just where you live versus where I live, where I was raised versus where you were raised. You could be the exact same quote unquote race, even though we know race is a construct, but you could be that, have the same skin and everything, but not be culturally alike in a lot of ways, and have the same skin and look the same and still not be exactly alike, or you can be alike in ways that you weren't even aware of. So that being said, that's what the conversation is like today. Comment below if you are part of a cultural marriage and what the differences are between you and your spouse. I know what we found interesting is the similarities we had in food. Right, like immediately you could say, oh, the food here is based on African traditional food, which makes a lot of sense. You speak on that?
Yeah, the when I came here, I noticed that the food in the south, the way it was prepared, and the nature of the food was very similar to food in Zambia or Southern Africa in general.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a very similar touch when it came to the food culture and how it's prepared. So that's the first thing I noticed. Having lived in Europe too, I know that that's not how they prepared food, but here the preparation methods and the food itself is very similar to Africa. Maybe it was influenced by the people that were brought here back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was sustained over generations. So that's one thing I noticed. Yeah. Even though they, black people in particular, I think have retained some pieces of African culture. In the West, Europe, even here, there's a lot of nuclear family lifestyle. I have noticed that not everybody, but a lot of black people I know kind of have their extended family.
Right, like extended, meaning the cousins and the aunties and
Just
all
they
that.
interact a lot, they live together, they have large families. So unlike nuclear families where you mostly find father, mother, and children, people here, like in Africa, they'll live with cousins, they live with their other relatives, brothers, sisters, and that's how I grew up. Yeah, so that's a little bit of similarity. Not everybody does it, but I've seen it here among black people. So
Yeah. So there are some things that like have remained steadfast through generations, even though one was born in Africa, in Zambia to be specific, and I was born here, like food dynamics and maybe family dynamics, but also religious dynamics are quite similar, I believe. I was raised, what was I raised? Baptist. I was raised in Baptist church. It was primarily black, and Christianity, evangelical Christianity, was the basis of growing up. And there wasn't a member of my family who did not go to church in some type of Baptist form. And church was life. We were in a youth group. We were there during the week for choir rehearsals. We did Bible study. We stayed for the however many Bible study on Sundays and the sermons. Church was life, okay? So, but it seems like in Zambia, religion is very important as well.
yes, religion is also big in Zambia, and that's also big among the African American community here. So that's one similarity. But of course, there are a lot of differences. You know, here it's a mix. The African Americans that are spiritual in a Christian sense, and then there are African Americans that are spiritual in a different way, and others that have just sort of very different views that are not common in Zambia, where almost everybody is religious. It's mostly Christian. Then we have a few other religions, but it's predominantly Christian. You know that, as a matter of fact, it's a Christian nation. So, but overall, in terms of religion, traditional practices, but those still be differences. Even though we have the extended family concept, so to speak, it varies. Over here, well, I think in Zambia it's a little bit more extended and extended, whereby it's very common that if somebody's doing very well, they'll help others, whether they are over 18 or not. Maybe a little more help than people commonly not here. So, I think, so I'm sure you saw those differences. People seeking help, they're over 18 or they're 30 or 40. And then you'll be wondering.
Right, yeah, that is different. But I guess that also has to do with the nature of the economy in Zambia and everything like that. I wouldn't want to surmise that that's just cultural, but because y'all have an unemployment rate that's like what?
I don't know how it is now, but it's so much higher than
It's
here.
higher. So, I mean, if we were to look it up, it's a drastic difference. So you might have people who are adults seeking help. However, lately in the U.S., a lot of children have gone back and started living with their parents because of it was like after 2007 2008 a lot of people started living with their extended families, and children who were grown because they could not maintain housing outside of their parental home went back home and saved money. So I guess it's like
So it's more economical than.
I would
So it's a practice
think
that
it's
emerged from economic
economics.
pressures. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, like if you don't have anywhere to go, you go home. go to mama, go to
Yeah.
dad.
Yeah, in Zambia, it has been like that for quite some time. That's why it looks like part of the culture of how we do things. But I'm sure if things changed drastically economically, it would be different.
Right, and I
So,
believe it would be if economics changed.
and then, in terms of, want to talk about the roles.
So domestic differences, gender roles. I actually think in the U.S. we are far more conservative than what others realize we are. I know that we have this reputation of being, we have a reputation of being what? Non-conservative, but really and truly, it's not that way. The United States is far more conservative than what people think. The media portrays sometimes an image of the United States that is counter to what the mass actually does. Um, and so when it comes to gender roles, like my mother, although she raised me to be very independent, she's a family of like 11, and they would cater to the men in their family, meaning they would always fix their plates first. They would make sure that they had everything that they needed and took care of the younger boys before anybody else. It was the woman's or the girls' responsibility to make sure that everybody else was taken care of. Okay, they kind of took on a motherly, nurturing role of their brothers. But particularly working men, made sure they had their fixed their plates, things like that, for them. Um, in my own household growing up, my father though, he was former military, so he would wash, he would clean, he would cook, he knew all those things, ironing and all those things. He was not bound by traditional norms because he had to learn how to do all those things for himself while he was in the military. Once you become a very self-sufficient person, I think you tend to do more um, for yourself, because there's always the thing in the back of your head. It's like, nobody's going to sit here and do this for me. So I think it was less about a gender role for my father and more about he knew how to do it himself. He wasn't going to let it sit there and happen. Um, you know, when I growing up in their household, my mom worked. Both my parents worked, and both of them would cook, clean, and all those things. So that's how I was raised. So for me, it was completely normal to see a man do all those things.
Yeah, wow. I'm not for my military, but I do those things.
Yeah, I think military reference is more so. It's like even I mention it because it wasn't necessarily the case in the home that my father grew up in, that gender norms weren't looked at because his parents were apostolic faith. So I mean, but his mother was a nurse for the military. His father worked as well. So they had like a different way of just looking at things. And I just mentioned the military because I think a lot of men and women learn how to be very self-sufficient when they go through the military. Something that they may or may not learn at home all the time, because at home your parents may do a lot of it for you. Which I think in the black community in the U.S. that happens a lot, that we will do it for you. We will do it for our children. And I don't know how to explain that. We will do the things for them. And I know I try to be different, like, because like with our son, I try to be different. It's like, I want you to do it for yourself. Although I did do it for a long time, too long, I think, when he was younger. And so it's hard to transition from continuously doing stuff for someone to not, when they're used to you doing it for them.
Yeah. So in Zambia, it's very common that some roles are done by girls, like cleaning the house, cooking. Then there are some other roles that are for boys, but for the most part, girls are so much busy at home. Growing up, my sisters and just girls in general, so much busy at home, such that because it has been like that culturally, society had to respond in some way. Like when they're determining, I don't know if it's the same now, but when I was growing up, the passing mark for girls was lower. The passing mark for boys was higher.
You mean in high school?
No, just to transition from 7th grade to 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
Or from 9th grade
Why did they do it lower? Do you know?
Because girls had so much roles to do at home, so they were disadvantaged. So they are not going to have the same time to study as the boys.
Oh, wow.
So they had to to factor that in.
Wow.
So because it would be unfair to say, well, one has more time to study, the other one just have so much roles, domestic roles. So that's why they did it that way. But growing up, because you get these things on how society does things, so I was a little bit resistant when my parents asked me to wash dishes or clean the inside of the house. Now, outside of the house, that one mostly was for the boys' role. So I was a little bit resistant. But my father explained to me that, no, boys do this too. It's okay to cook and clean and all that. So I was still a little bit skeptical until I think one day I came home. I don't know if he set me up or he was just genuinely doing it. So I came home one day and I found him washing dishes, and that was the end of that conversation. So I started washing dishes.
So he led by example at that point.
Yes, he did. So
I
don't know if he just woke up that day. It was a lot of children and a lot of girls, a lot of children in general, so he didn't have to be washing dishes. So that's I was among the younger of the children, so probably did it back in the day. But when I was growing up, he didn't, except that one time I found him doing it. So I don't know if he was just trying to show me that it's okay, or he was just decided to do it. So after that, I would wash dishes in the inside of the house, and I do those roles here too. Yeah. So and some of the things, and my father would ask me, why do you do this, or why don't you do this? There's a historical context to it. Maybe that's for another discussion of how things are done that way. How girls found themselves to do the domestic roles. Part of it, maybe if I can explain quickly, it's back in the day, it was men who would go hunting for animals, or gathering food, or cutting down trees to cultivate the land. So it was a lot of skills that they needed to build to be able to take care of the home or to perform those roles. They had to be strong enough. So they're not going to learn those skills when they are 14 or 15. They needed time to learn them, and they needed time to be strong enough that they can do all that and have a family. So when boys were ready to do that, they will be like 17, 18 to be able to do that. On the other hand, the girl's role was considered to be domestic, where they were taught how to take care of kids and clean the house and take care of the husband. Those lessons were not extensive. They did not require prolonged extensive training to be physically strong and learn those skills slowly. So it took longer for boys to learn theirs than it took the girls to
learn their
skills at home. So the girls would be ready pretty quickly. 14, 15, they'll be ready, and back in the day they married pretty early, and they'll be ready for marriage. But the men that will be ready for marriage will be like 17, 18. So men were always older, and that's where it came from, that men were always older. But up to now, people still think that a man should be older than a woman. And because men went to hunt and gather fruits and cultivate the land, women remained home to take care of the kids. That's where it came from, that women should cook and clean and all that. But in modern day, women go out to hunt and gather food and cultivate the land, so to speak, because women now have jobs. So they bring in income and take care of the family. But somehow we still want to maintain the same dynamics when so much has changed. We don't look at the historical context where that came from.
Okay,
So-
say that again. Because that thing fell down and we both looked.
Yeah, I was saying that's a historic context of it, how it started, but we don't look at why it came to be that way, that women cooked it clean. Even though the world keeps changing, women now are going out to cultivate the land and hunt and gather fruits, basically going to work. They're performing roles that men used to perform then, but you still want to hold them to domestic roles alone, which is unfair.
You think that there'll ever be are you seeing a slow change in Zambia or any type of change where that's
It is a lot of change.
Because I mean, even here, people want to hold on to domestic, quote unquote, gender roles, but it's a much more fast paced change.
Yeah, even there, it's and there are a lot of Zambian men that I know. They're able to cook and clean and help their wives and all that. But there's also sometimes when there are people at home, they don't want husbands to go in the kitchen because people start talking.
And see, there lies probably more of the issue is that even though men and women are both like doing the same roles, people are too concerned about what other people think. And so they're literally, here's a story. My grandparents, as I mentioned, my father's parents, they were apostolic faith. In that faith at the time, they were not allowed to have televisions. Okay? So, but what they would do is they would actually have a television on one of those rolling things, and when people would visit, they would hide the television. And it comes to find out that other families also did the same thing. Okay? So everybody's out there saying that, no, you can't have a television, and pretending that they don't have one and hiding it from their, cohort in the church. But they were all doing the same thing because they were afraid of what the next person would say. And it's just like, if everybody would just stop worrying about what other people were thinking, and get past that social normative, then it would be all right. Because what it sounds like is that a lot of Zambian men do the same roles as their wives, and vice versa. The wives work and do the same roles as their husbands, but yet nobody wants people outside to know of the home. It's like they have to keep up appearances. And I think that that's probably the bigger issue than anything. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of my cousins told me that, well, shoot, yeah, the husband does cook and clean and all that, but she won't let them do it when people are visiting.
Exactly.
Yeah, so people do it, but there is just this, people just have it that this is the way it's supposed to be, and even though people understand that everybody can do it, they just don't want to be seen to do it. Because people will be talking.
Because people will be talking. The same people who will be talking who do it at their own home.
Exactly.
That's funny. Oh, wow. So, I think the conclusion is everybody should just focus on the business that pays you, which is your own home, your backyard.
Yeah, you make your own rules, create your own. There are things that are standard as good and good across the board, but especially when you come from different cultures, I think it's important to understand each other's cultures and background and see where you meet somewhere and just talk about things and work them that way. I think it's good that I had that preparation from my father, because I would have expected you to be cooking and cleaning alone.
Listen, our first year of marriage was no summer breeze, okay? We had to work things out when it came to the gender roles, though. I mean, mainly because I had washed dishes my whole life and I was tired of washing dishes. I did do this. I read somewhere, somebody giving advice that whatever you do in the first year of your marriage, you're going to be stuck doing the rest of your marriage. And I said to myself, I read it in a book that was like about marriage, and I said to myself, I will not be stuck washing dishes for the rest of my life.
Who wrote that book?
I don't even remember.
Where does he live?
I don't remember. And so I think probably one of our first arguments we ever had was probably over dishwashing, because I just refused. I was just like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm doing it my whole life. And then I realized I had to let that go. Right? It doesn't matter. I had to let that go. And whoever wrote that book is stupid. No. Because what you learn in marriage is that everything is fluid. Everything is fluid. And sometimes he is the leader and I am the follower, depending, and sometimes I am the leader and he is the follower. And sometimes we're both leading together. Side by, it's fluid. It just depends on what's happening and where our strengths lie. And we depend on each other. And it's not an argument. It's not a fight over who's what. It's about leaning on each other to get our goals met and get things accomplished. Yeah. I think. Do you agree with that?
Yes,
or did I not say that the right way?
Explain that very well.
Thank you, husband. So I guess that's the wisdom of it. Like, don't do that, ladies, in your first year of marriage. Do not try to set expectations that are stupid. It's one thing to have an expectation of being treated fairly and kindly and respectfully. That's completely understandable. But when it comes to sharing the load at the house, you have to share the load. It is not just one person or the other. It is a marriage of two whole people, hopefully. Like, we were both adults. We were adults, okay? I was 29, he was 34, 33.
Yeah.
Something like that.
You were 27.
I was 29.
No, 28, I think I was 33. Well, something like that. Though we have an age gap. I'm older.
Yeah, he's older than me. That's not a secret. That's not a secret at all. But I was full grown, okay? And he was full grown. And we had both lived a little bit. He had a whole life before me. I had a whole life before him. So I think after a while, it was just easier for us to to figure it out. I'm not gonna say it was easy, but it was because we were older. I think that there's a wisdom and age that youth doesn't always have when it comes to disagreements and culture differences. And so if we were to say anything, if I were to say anything encouraging to a younger person right now getting ready to get married, is you have to be flexible, willing to change some things. No, change is the wrong word. Adapt. You have to be willing to adapt. Still be your authentic self, but adapt. And because this is a whole person, and so are you, and they have to be willing to adapt to you. I think that's the key word. Like, if you get with somebody who's not willing to adapt, then that's a problem.
It's a serious one.
That's a serious problem. You're like, you can't be with someone who's gonna just be this is it, and have no leeway whatsoever, no matter what their culture is. They can be the exact same culture as you. You don't want rigidity, because what you did at the first year of your marriage, the second year, and the third year are going to be completely different. How you looked in 5 years versus 10 years is going to be different. Would you agree on that?
I do.
Yeah, so you have to be willing to adapt.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that 100%. Well put, like.